We wanted to be the Beatles. We wanted to be four guys that each one of us was like John, Paul, Ringo, and George, and everyone loved each one of us separately, but all together they loved us like immensely. And that was, we thought, wow, what a great.
Make sure to only collect items legally, said Peter Criss, the Catman. With his face painted in black and white and eyes as haunted as the shadows that danced across the stage, his thunderous drumming echoed through arenas. His trembling, raw voice whispered the aching lyrics of Beth. Many once believed he was just the drummer. In truth, he was the quiet soul behind the empire that was Kiss. Without Peter, there would be no Beth, no Kiss as the world knows it today. As one of the band's four founding members, Peter Criss helped craft the unique identity of a rock phenomenon that would transcend generations. Kiss wasn't merely music, it was fire, myth, and an unmatched explosion of visual and sonic power in rock history. Yet even under the blinding spotlight of fame, Peter remained in the shadows, often battling not just his bandmates, but his own demons and destiny. He wasn't fired just once, he was let go multiple times. He didn't leave the band in a blaze of glory, instead, he quietly vanished. Beneath the cat makeup was a man who had stood at the peak of stardom, only to be cast aside by the very band he helped create. When the world turned away, when old friends went silent, and all that remained after the Northridge earthquake was $100,000 and a gun, Peter came close to giving up. But he didn't pull the trigger. Instead, he picked up the drumsticks once again. He came back, not with a triumphant solo, but with resilience. Through his memoir Makeup to Breakup, he spoke with the voice of someone forgotten and cast aside, but never truly defeated. Then life challenged him again, with cancer. What gave him the strength to endure so many devastating falls? Why was the man behind a rock legend cast out of it? How did Peter Criss, the Catman, the outcast, the forsaken, find the will to keep going, to fight back, and to strike one final beat from the heart? That story is still unfolding. Peter Criss was born George Peter John Criscuola on December 20, 1945, in Brooklyn, New York, a place known for its toughness. As the eldest child of Italian immigrants, he grew up surrounded by the chaos of loud streets, constant traffic, and after-school fights. He didn't study music in plush studios but learned rhythm in the rough world of street gangs, where survival meant fighting back. That harsh upbringing taught him one simple rule: to survive, you had to fight like a stray cat, with all your instincts. His family lived in poverty, cramped into a small apartment. His father Joseph was a quiet craftsman. His mother, Loretta, was a strong and disciplined woman who kept the household running with deep Catholic faith and fierce determination. Loretta was the first to notice Peter's musical talent. She protected him from the violence outside with the warmth of her small kitchen. Peter remembered how he started drumming by tapping spoons on the table, slowly transforming every household object into an instrument. But the music that shaped him wasn't rock, it was jazz. He grew up immersed in the crisp beats of drummers like Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich, whom he would later call the gods of drumming. His love for music deepened during afternoons in Greenwich Village, where street performers turned parks into sacred spaces of rhythm and melody. Yet, Peter wasn't just a dreamer. In the unstable post-war years, he joined gangs and even sold handmade guns just to get by. He'd been in brutal fights, left bloodied and broken, and had several close brushes with the law. But because he had faced so many dark moments, Peter saw music not as a path to fame, but as salvation. For him, music was the only escape from the anger, poverty, and confusion that haunted Brooklyn's streets. It wasn't just an ambition, it was survival. That's why when others saw Kiss as just a rock band, Peter saw it as something more: destiny. Peter's rise in music didn't happen overnight. His early career was a long, gritty road full of blood, sweat, and determination. He played on rundown stages for half-empty rooms, sometimes performing only for a handful of drunken barflies in rough Brooklyn clubs. While in high school, he attended the School of Industrial Art in Manhattan, originally dreaming of becoming a painter. But life had other plans. Between classes, he would sneak away to listen to live jazz in Greenwich Village. Peter's deep connection to the world of drums began when fate brought him back together with his childhood friend, Jerry Nolan, who would later become the drummer for the New York Dolls. Jerry was the one who introduced Peter to drumming, showing him his first rhythms and sparking a lifelong passion. Peter soon started performing with local bands such as the Barracudas, Chelsea, and most notably, Lips, a group he formed in the late 1960s alongside guitarist Stan Penridge. While Lips mostly played cover songs in low-budget East Coast venues, it was Peter's first real move toward a serious music career. Those early days may not have brought fame, but they shaped Peter's grit, stage presence, and unwavering determination, qualities essential for making it in the harsh world of rock. Instead of waiting for a break, Peter went out and created one. In 1972, he ran a small but bold ad in Rolling Stone magazine that read, "Drummer with vocal ability looking for band to climb to the top." That ad grabbed the attention of two ambitious musicians, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, who were looking to form a new band. Just weeks after the audition, Peter officially joined a group that had no name, no deal, no management, only a shared dream and a streak of wild ambition. That moment marked the beginning of something massive, not just for Peter but for the future of rock itself. By 1973, the band had a name, Kiss. What started as a spark in dingy New York clubs exploded into a cultural phenomenon. Peter, painted in black and white as the Catman, became an iconic part of the original lineup. Alongside Gene Simmons as the blood-drenched demon, Paul Stanley as the heartthrob frontman, and Ace Frehley as the cosmic guitar wizard, Peter embodied raw instinct and unpredictable energy. Kiss wasn't like anything people had seen. Their shows featured fire-breathing guitars, fog machines, fireworks, fake blood, and massive platform boots, an over-the-top spectacle set to pounding rock anthems that felt like the end of the world. Even in the chaos, Peter never faded into the background. His jazz-rock fusion drumming style and soul-bearing voice gave him a unique edge. He didn't just play rhythms, he told stories with each beat, delivering everything from thunderous power to haunting stillness. Albums like Kiss, 1974, Hotter Than Hell, 1974, and Dressed to Kill, 1975, built the band's momentum, but it was Destroyer in 1976 that finally pushed them into the mainstream. And much of that success was owed to an unlikely hit, Beth. Beth, I hear you calling, but I can't come home right now. With those opening lines, Peter's voice delivered a level of emotional depth few expected from a band known for fire and glitter. Inspired by his troubled marriage, the ballad showed a softer, more human side of Kiss. It became the band's first top 10 hit and proved that beneath the makeup were real people with real pain. Peter had poured his heart into the song, sacrificing everything, even the relationships that mattered, for the sake of music. Kiss followed Destroyer with more legendary records, including Rock and Roll Over, 1976, and Love Gun, 1977, defining the band's golden era. On stage, Peter opened the show with Black Diamond and ended it with Beth, delivering intensity and soul in equal measure. His drumming, blending jazz grooves with rock muscle, set him apart in a time when many drummers focused purely on speed. While not the most technical, Peter had something far rarer, the ability to make drums feel. In a world full of noise, he left behind an emotional echo. But fame is fleeting. Behind the face paint and platinum records, cracks began to show. Of all the original members, Peter was the first to be pushed out as tensions rose. Still, in 1977, he remained the Catman on top of the world, as Kiss reached legendary status. Peter didn't leave Kiss willingly, he was slowly edged out. By 1979, even as the band continued to generate millions, Peter, the same man who co-founded the group and gave it one of its biggest hits, was becoming a forgotten figure within the band he helped build. Clashes with Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, creative conflicts, erratic studio behavior, and substance abuse left him increasingly isolated. Some concerts he couldn't finish. On some recordings, someone else played his parts. When Unmasked dropped in 1980, his face appeared on the cover, but his drumming was nowhere to be heard. From founding member to background shadow, Peter's presence had faded. And then came the car crash. A devastating crash shattered Peter Criss's right hand, leaving him terrified that he might never drum again. His career hung by a thread, his fame plummeted, and his personal life began to fall apart. His first wife left him, his mental health deteriorated, and the music that had once been his salvation now felt like a heavy burden. Then, in 1991, he faced another painful setback. A homeless man in California began impersonating Peter, spreading false claims that the legendary Kiss drummer had become a destitute addict. The media picked up the story, and public outrage surged. Peter was compelled to appear on the Phil Donahue Show to confront the impersonator face to face and reclaim his identity. He wasn't angry, he was heartbroken. In a world he once electrified, people now believed a fraud more than they believed in him. The blows didn't stop there. Peter was later accused, subtly but dangerously, by former bandmate Paul Stanley of harboring anti-Semitic views. Peter vehemently denied the allegation, calling it a deep insult to his character. Beneath the public feuding, one painful truth lingered: they had once called each other brothers. In 2004, Peter was fired from Kiss for the final time. There was no meeting, no farewell, just a phone call telling him he was too old and no longer fit for the band's demanding 2-hour performances. According to Peter, it was a humiliation. The band he helped create had once again stripped him of his musical identity with cold indifference. 3 years later, in 2007, Peter was diagnosed with breast cancer, a rare diagnosis for any man, and nearly unheard of in the world of rock. He kept it quiet, no press, no announcements. He underwent surgery and radiation in silence. This time, the fight wasn't with the world, but with his own body, and he met it not with fury, but with quiet resolve. These trials didn't break Peter Criss. They transformed him. From a wild and explosive drummer, he became a man marked by scars, but grounded in truth. A man who lived with clarity, honesty, and deep reflection. Behind the fierce persona of the Catman on stage was a deeply sensitive man, always seeking inner peace. Peter never flaunted his personal life. What he offered the public were honest, unfiltered glimpses into his world. From the chaos of his first marriage to the calm of his current life with his third wife, Gene Criss, Peter walked through pain and loss to rediscover himself in the quiet warmth of love. He once admitted that if it weren't for music, especially the drums, he might have ended up on a dark path. Growing up in Brooklyn surrounded by gang violence, music became his escape. "Music saved me from myself," he once said. Every drumbeat released rage, loneliness, and the pain of feeling abandoned. Drumming wasn't just playing, it was survival. It was therapy. It was the lifeline that pulled him back from the edge. Together, they wrote a book, cared for their pets, and built a life away from the spotlight, yet full of meaning. Though he's left the stage behind, Peter still plays the drums every single day. No one asks him to. There are no contracts or demands. He plays because it's how he breathes. It's how he lives. Peter Criss may not have been the most technically skilled drummer in the world, but he was unforgettable. Every beat he played carried his heart and soul. Every ballad was a window into his pain and truth. In a world where drummers are often just background noise, Peter stood out by turning that position into a powerful voice. He played for the underdogs, for the overlooked, for the broken-hearted. Kiss may have become a spectacle of fire, blood, and theatrics, but without Peter's vulnerable, human touch, it would have been just another hollow show. Beth, a song born in loneliness and sung with raw sincerity, changed everything. It didn't just give the band a radio hit, it carved out space in rock where sadness could resonate among the flames and smoke. His drumming style, an emotional blend of rock and jazz, was wildly expressive yet controlled. Many aspiring drummers learn from him that true power comes from playing with feeling, not just skill. But Peter's greatest legacy wasn't technique. It was his courage to pour his soul into every beat, to use music as a weapon against his own emptiness. That can't be taught, but it can inspire. Beyond his music, Peter Criss left behind a different kind of legacy, his unflinching honesty with himself. He never masked his struggles with addiction, the betrayals he endured, or his fear of death. That raw vulnerability made him feel more real to fans than any carefully crafted image ever could. Not as a rock star, but as someone human, someone who fell, got back up, and held tightly to the truth in his soul. Peter never needed awards to validate his impact. His true legacy lives in the hearts of those who listened to Beth in their quietest, loneliest moments, those who found pieces of themselves in his gritty, heartfelt voice. As he once admitted, if not for music, he might have ended up on a much darker path. But he chose the drums, and through them, he not only saved himself but spoke directly to a generation that felt lost. Today, Peter Criss is no longer the Catman lighting up the stage. He's a man in his 70s, living a peaceful life in New Jersey with his third wife, Gigi Criss. The smoke, fire, and roaring crowds have faded, but within him still lives a soul that quietly aches for rhythm. After announcing his retirement in 2017 with a farewell performance at the Cutting Room in New York, Peter stepped away from the spotlight. Instead, he's poured his energy into personal projects, writing, spending time in his home studio, working on an unpublished children's book, and completing an unfinished solo album. His battle with male breast cancer, a rare and often overlooked disease, once threatened to take it all. But his health has since stabilized. In 2022, he shared that he still undergoes regular checkups and considers himself cancer-free, though never careless. That illness, once a threat to everything he held dear, now reminds him every day to value the life he still has. But even more striking than his physical recovery is his unshaken spirit. Peter remains bold, direct, and firm in his beliefs. Though it's been years since he parted ways with Kiss for good, he's never backed down from speaking his truth about loyalty, legacy, and what personal honor really means. He gives the occasional interview, not to seek sympathy or validation, but to remind the world that behind the black and white face paint was a man. One who was scarred, yes, but never truly broken. To those who love him, Peter Criss is more than a legendary drummer. He's a symbol of survival. A man who lost nearly everything, his band, wealth, health, and pride, but still found a way to rise, quietly but with undeniable grace. These days, he may no longer hold drumsticks. But he clings tightly to something more profound, gratitude. Gratitude for the fans who ever felt the rhythm of his heart. Peter Criss, the man behind the iconic Catman makeup, was never a legend in the flashy, Hollywood sense. He became an icon by daring to be honest, by screaming into the void, falling hard, and clawing his way back, scarred but still standing, still beating the drum of his life. In a world of overhyped fame and carefully curated legacies, Peter Criss is something rare, real. Rebellious. Imperfect. And that's exactly why he stands out. Not because he helped form Kiss, or because Beth became a radio hit, but because he lived his truth. He never ran from the shadows, never hid the pain, and never apologized for who he was. Peter once said, "If not for the drums, I might have become a criminal." It may sound like a joke, but it reveals his philosophy. Music wasn't just a career, it was his lifeline. A path to escape, to endure, and to find redemption. In every beat he ever played, people didn't just hear rhythm. They heard a cry for help, a desperate plea, a heartbeat. Now, nearly 80 years old, Peter Criss may no longer be a drummer, but he remains a storyteller. His is the tale of a poor Brooklyn kid who rose to the biggest stage in the world, only to be cast out of his own dream, yet never stayed down for long. Do you remember the first drum beat that gave you chills? Or how Beth once stilled the night? If you do, share your thoughts. Because for Peter Criss, music only